Let's head west first up because this is the big story coming out of the weekend and be one of the biggest stories potentially of the season because of the ramifications. And we're talking about that boy Harley.
Yeah, and they are huge ramifications, TJ. The tackle on Darcy Wilson and the likely sighting. I say likely sighting because this is the type of action in a tackle that the AFL has been now spending years trying to take out of the game. So we'll just go back to what happened recently with Harrison Jones of Essendon and his tackle that got him a week for what he did on Paul Curtis there. Now, there's no two incidents the same in football, but that's Zach Fisher, actually. There's no two incidents the same there in football, but he does look as though he's going to be in trouble, Lordo. Before I get your views on it, Adam Simpson, coach of West Coast Eagles, doing what he felt he needed to do last night post-match.
I can't. You know, you want to free up the restrictions around comments about tribunal umpires, then we're going to have a good conversation, but I'm restricted a little bit, so I thought there was nothing in it. That's what I'll say.
So Rising Star favourite Harley Reid will know today from the Match Review office as to what they think it's worthy of. It may be one, it may be two, it may be more. But equally, Sam Darcy on Friday night, the second favourite for the Rising Star Award this year, had this incident with Braden Maynard, and he has already been cited for 2 weeks to take him out of action. So as per the criteria on the Rising Star, a suspension of any note does rule those players ineligible. And we've now got a situation where, sitting here on the Sunday morning, TJ, it seems likely that the two biggest names in this space are not going to be able to take the award.
OK, can I put it to the panel? Can Harley Reid mount any defence that's going to either minimise the penalty or get him off completely? Surely there's a defence there for him.
There's no defence. He can't get off. You've just seen.
But he didn't mean to sling him into the ground,
It doesn't matter.
He did it out of frustration too, because he was being tagged.
Well, you're allowed to be frustrated.
But he'd be disappointed because he knows how frustrated he was. He hadn't impacted the game in his third quarter. He'd been tagged by Windhager, and I felt that was frustration, that tackle there. And unfortunately, the way it is at the moment, last year, I think he gets away with it, but this year, it looks like a week.
Unfortunately, we lose the two best young players to the Rising Star, but it's what makes them both so good, in my opinion. Like, Darcy has an intent about him that not many young forwards I've ever seen at that age have. And Harley Reid has he didn't like the way he was going and he wanted to do something about it. Got frustrated, but that's what you like to see in a player, that he wants to try and do something. It's going to be a disappointment for the award, but these guys will be fine.
Do we need to remove the fairness element of the Rising Star? Like, particularly now with so many Ticky Touchwood suspensions that we are getting that we wouldn't have got 5-6 years ago. So these two players ineligible. It's going to be a bit farcical on the night when one of them don't win it because of a week suspension probably for Harley Reid, and whether we need to remove that and have a threshold. Maybe if you've been suspended for 4 weeks, then that triggers a threshold. If it's just one like that, you should still be able to...
I think it's a conversation the industry should have, and it's one that I've had this morning with Corey McKernan, who in 1994 suffered the same fate. He lost that year's Rising Star to Chris Scott when he was found guilty of a hand trip, which was subsequently made just a 50-metre penalty. But Kane, he has endorsed what you suggested there, or at least put up there in the conversation, the eligibility as being able to appeal suspensions. He actually referenced, TJ, how Paddy Cripps in 2022 had a 2-match ban initially given to him for his hit on Archie. He took it through the systems, which he's referring to there, which have changed over the journey through the appeals tribunal and got off. So he won a Brownlow on the back of initially being given 2 weeks.
Did Corey McKernan, the then football boss was Ian Collins, correct?
Yeah.
Did he in latter years basically say, look, he probably shouldn't have been rubbed out?
Well, the rules itself did, because the hand trip that he incurred in that year was very quickly made just a 50-metre penalty in subsequent matches. And then, unfortunately for Corey, as we know, 2 years later, 1996, lost a Brownlow also for being ineligible through the tribunal system for an event that may have been judged differently in later years.
We'll move on to both of their nights. Sam Darcy firstly started in undisciplined fashion. You saw the 50-metre penalty. Then he gave another one away, and I just thought it was terrific coaching to get him off the ground. It was an old-fashioned dragging, which you just don't see. Got him off, chatted to him for what looked to be at least a minute, and then the response that I think you alluded to, Lordo, like he's made of the right stuff, and his response after the disappointment and getting dragged to come back and kick 3 and be a match winner, I thought we should see perhaps a little bit more of coaches just calming their young players down.
Yeah, so a big tick for Luke Beveridge
Huge tick.
in a season where he hasn't had a lot from the media, but that one there, and just his demeanour and the level-headedness that he had there in sort of talking to Sam
And what
Darcy.
about Darcy too? He's not sitting there saying nothing either. He's speaking back to the coach as much as the coach is speaking. So I loved what Sam Darcy did there.
And then there's Harley Reid, Brownie, you mentioned the tag. So he'd had 17 at half-time, and then Ross Lyons got... So 13 he had in the second quarter, and that's the first half v second half comparison after they put Windhager to him. 3 touches in the second. He gave away 4 free kicks in the second half. You saw the report. So this is his life now. This is his lot, which is a real credit to the young player in his first year to cop this attention. If you play West Coast and you do not tag Harley Reid now, you're not giving your team the best chance to win because he's shown he's vulnerable to it, and it was a huge difference in the game. Credit to Windhager, and Harley Reid's just going to have to be better and learn how to cope with
He
it.
got a lot of free kicks in that third term, so he lost his way a bit. I'll ask you, Kane, because when I first started to get tagged, it was a real mental challenge for me. When the player came and put his arm across, you sit there and your shoulders do drop a bit. So when you used to tag a fair bit, and it's coming back into the game a lot more, how did players react when you went and put your arm across?
Sometimes they're defeated before they start, particularly for a young player who hasn't coped with that before and didn't know what to do and how to deal with it. So he needs some guidance. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of senior players at West Coast that can give him that guidance.
You're taking the mickey. That's got to be one of the most pretentious, self-indulgent...
I tried to do it professionally.
Were you tagging those 9 weeks you were the best player in the competition?
Every man's 10. Every
Make a good point. It makes a good point.
The look on Lordo's face was just absolutely priceless. Like,
It's good to see we can have a good laugh, Tony, isn't it?
I like that, Brownie. Max King ended the game for St Kilda, unfortunately, on the bench after he was taken out of it with what was a knee injury late in the piece. He stayed on and came back on after this particular incident, but ultimately taken out of the game, and will eagerly await with apprehension as to what the Saints TJ will say today about that diagnosis on the knee.
okay.